Hi everyone, this is the Shopstool Podcast, episode 6 of season 3. As always, I'm going to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Robin?
Yeah, not too bad. And Brian, how's it going?
I am decent. Yeah, pretty good.
Decent. Still stuck in Melbourne.
Still stuck in Melbourne.
Yeah, we won't talk too much about that in this show, but there's obviously, it's still not great down there. And my name is Robin. Welcome to the show, everyone. Now, tonight we've got a guest, and in what appears to be a bit of a recurring theme lately, surprise, surprise, he's from Melbourne. He's been a professional woodworker from 2004, but went full-time in 2015. His pieces range in size and design, and he has one of the bigger catalogues of work that I've seen on, I think, pretty much all of the guests that we've had on this show. There are a number of pieces to go through on his website. So I'm really excited to get into this. Welcome to the show, the one and only Simeon Dux. How are you this evening?
Very well. Very excited. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We had a bit of technical difficulty getting into the show, but we've managed to work through that. So it's gonna be a good show. Very excited about it.
Yeah, awesome.
So what we do with most guests when we start is just to get a bit of an idea of what you do, but also what got you to this point. So in terms of, are there any interesting stories, and also from the perspective of, we have a lot of woodworkers who are listening to the show trying to get ideas, inspiration, that kind of thing. So what were those pivot points in your life that got you to now, this point where you are making some of the most incredible stuff?
Okay, well, I suppose, in all honesty, it all started with not being fantastic in high school. And when I finished up, I sort of got into a short course at TAFE, and it wasn't going great. And my father decided that he'd offer me an apprenticeship. And so I wasn't super enthusiastic about it at the time. But I thought, you know what, I'll take it, see what happens. Just a new way to learn, on site as opposed to, book-wise. And so I did my apprenticeship with my father, which was a carpentry and joinery apprenticeship. So I started that in 2004, would have been the start of the apprenticeship. Did the 4 years with him. And then I suppose that the more I did it, the more I started to enjoy woodwork. I never enjoyed it at the start. It was just a job to begin with. There was certain elements of it that over time I really enjoyed. And I think the main thing was probably just seeing things come together at the end of the day. Like you work all day, and then all of a sudden there's half a house to show for it in terms of framing or whatever. It all started with carpentry, and I suppose the more I did that, the more I would look at pieces of furniture, even really simple stuff, just kitchen cabinetry and run-of-the-mill bookcases that you'd see in people's houses, and I just think to myself, I wonder how they joined that without a screw or a nail. It all sort of stemmed from like a practicality point, and the more I started to have my interest piqued in it, the more I decided I needed to learn how to do it. I think it was 2013, I enrolled at the Melbourne Guild of Fine Woodworking in Melbourne with Alistair Bowl as my instructor, and it really just changed my whole mindset. Like, I just was hooked immediately. He gave me a little short tour of the school, showed me a bunch of half-finished student projects, and saw dovetails and saw cabriole legs and all this kind of cool stuff, and I was absolutely blown away. So I was like, if all your students can do this kind of quality work, I need to come here and learn, and that's basically where it all started.
Awesome. And listening to you talk about the cabinetry side of things, it's really interesting because we tend to have a mix of guests. Some people come from the cabinetry background, and some come from Dad was a woodworker, ergo I am a woodworker.
Yeah.
But do you feel like that cabinetry background, and Joey, I think you've asked this question before in one of our other shows, do you feel like that has helped you doing that we'll call it official training, has helped you in the work that you're doing now, or do you feel like it could have potentially hindered you because you're stuck in a rut with the way you work?
That's a good question, and I've sort of considered that myself a few times. I think, like, what I did was a carpentry apprenticeship, so it's not cabinet making per se. It's it's a lot more stick framing and all that kind of stuff, and so it was good in a way that I was able to learn a ton of stuff very quickly, especially doing the kind of work that my father's business did, which was a lot of home renovations and new builds and stuff, but there was a lot of challenging aspects to the work that he generally took on. So we weren't just doing, framing, or we weren't just doing fixing or anything. So I got a huge variety of knowledge over the time that I spent with them, which I think has paid dividends down the track. But in terms of furniture making, it probably did hinder my, I suppose, the time frame that it took me to get where I am now. Because if I had have just gone into a cabinetry and furniture making apprenticeship or something of that kind, that would have been another, close to 10 years up my sleeve. So it's been really good in one aspect, but it hasn't, I suppose, been as good in another, if that makes sense.
There is no ideal way into the world of making and furniture and stuff. I approached it from the exact opposite of the way you did, Sim. I came in with a design background and no maker background, and then had to work out how to make the things I was designing. Whereas you obviously learned how to make everything, and then the design influences started to come. So talk us through your first sort of contemporary pieces and who your influences were, and when those came about. Was it after you'd sort of finished at the Guild that you started to really take on designs and commissions, or? The way it worked at the Guild is I signed up to an open course, which is essentially just like a 3 hours a week. You can go in and build whatever you want, but you've got a tutor there who's going to help you design it, help you build it, and then I went and did a few other further lessons in like finishing and stuff like that. But all the pieces I made up till that point had been it wasn't based on design at all. It was always from a functionality standpoint. So I remember I built a dresser for my girlfriend, and it was like, all right, well, these are the bits of timber I've got here. This is what it needs to do. Let's go. And so I'm actually sitting here looking at it now, and you still got it?
Yeah, we have to get rid of it. It's a bit of an eyesore, but it's all solid Jarrah, and it's design wise. There's not really a design to it. It's a flat face with push to open drawers, and a few open shelves, and a mirror stuck in between a couple of small vertical, I suppose, bookcase style shelves on the top. But there's no design. So all my earlier pieces, you can see that it's really obvious. And I still really struggle with design. It's not something that's come naturally to me. I'm starting to have a few more specific interests and stuff, but it's always in the past been, oh wow, look how amazing that piece of furniture is. Look how they've done that leg or that joint or whatever. Maybe I should do something like that. So it's not necessarily, so it's kind of the opposite to you, Brian. It must be frustrating for someone like you to watch, someone like me sort of learning to design things when you're like, dude, it's probably comes so naturally to you,
Oh, man, if I could make like you, I'd be happy.
Cons and pros.
One of the best pieces of advice, and this just happened to come up in a show once, was Brian was talking about designing with intent.
Yep.
And as someone who's got neither a cabinetry background or a design background, so I'm in a different camp to everyone, I'd never even considered that as an approach. So before you get to the design phase, what do you want? What are you trying to mold this off? What are your influences? What are you trying? All of those questions. It's very in the early days. It's very easy to, as you say, you just need to have a thing, and you look at an IKEA catalog, and they have that thing, and you go, well, that's what I'm going to build towards because that is the thing.
Yeah.
what function does it serve, and how do I achieve that? That's a
Simeon.
mindset that's always going around. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right. I was just thinking about the design aspect, and my approach these days seems to be, I'm super pragmatic about how I'm going to do something. So, for example, if somebody wants a chest of drawers, the first thing I think about these days is, well, what kind of drawer specifically is it going to be? Are we going to put runners on it, or is it going to be traditional? And if it's going to be runners, I'd probably use these type A runners, which means I need to do this to the carcass, which means I'm limited because of that hardware. I'm now limited as to the rest of the design because A, B, and C has to happen. And so then by the time I mentally have built this out from one drawer and built it out so I can see the finished product in my head, it starts becoming like all these options have been stripped away from me because I've decided right from the start to go with drawer runner A. And then I have to make that decision of, am I happy enough to put a drawing together for the client? And 9 times out of 10 these days I'm like, yeah, I'm happy enough because time is precious. Do you how do you go about, like, do you look at the overall, kind of think about the overall first and then just work out how the heck you're going to fit everything inside of that?
Yeah, 100%. What you were saying is like spot on. I try to get as many kind of restrictions from the client as I can, because I also find it really hard to narrow something down to a final idea if there's a really broad
if it's
brief.
open.
So absolutely, I try to get as many restrictions as I can, and that leaves me with what, and then once I've got that kind of overall idea, I start my design from that point and go, okay, well, if we're stuck having 3 long drawers across the bottom, maybe we'll keep it, a little higher off the ground so it looks a little bit lighter or something like that, So, I definitely take the same approach for sure.
Yeah, I think I've said multiple times on this podcast that to design something with an open brief is a nightmare situation for me, and you've got to at least give me some maximum dimensions to something so I can work inside of a box. Because if you just tell me, the dining table can be 2 or 10 meters long, then I'm just, no, I can't do that. I need to know completely. It's got to be this long, and then I can draw that box and then see what can fit inside of it,
Yeah, 100%. I can totally relate.
Yeah.
So talking about the design, just having a look at your website, there's a couple running themes. So you've got a lot of the older style of design, which is really beautiful. You work your way up. You've done a couple of these bookcases, which I really want to talk about in a bit.
Sure.
But then which I assume is the last piece, you've got an Art Deco wall unit. Is that the latest piece?
It's not so much the latest piece. I tried to put the website in order of things that I think are the most appealing to people, or maybe the things that I'm the most proud of. So
okay.
So it's not necessarily the most recent at the top, but it's something that I'm still quite proud of. Glad that I achieved that bookcase.
I was going to ask where the sudden Art Deco style came from. My house is an old 1950s house with Art Deco everywhere, and I've just ripped all of it off because it's just not a style that I like.
Not for you?
Not for me.
Yeah.
But I can obviously with that image see it there. So was that a design that you were going for, or was that specifically commissioned?
That one, it was commissioned, and I think we came to that kind of design style because of her house, being that it was going to be built into her property. Like it's all fixed to the walls and everything. It's fitting within a very specific space. So we wanted something that was going to look good within the house and within the room. And that particular house had like really ornate ceiling roses, really beautiful cornices and stuff like that. And there was also a couple of other pieces in the room that the owner or the client was really proud of and wanted to enhance those pieces rather than completely take away from them. So I took a lot of a lot of inspiration from the pieces that were in the room already and the style of, cast plaster that was on the ceiling and on the walls and stuff, and used a few of those elements within the piece to try to make it fit within the space it was going to live.
It's just such a...
It's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that.
I was going to say, I find it so refreshing as well to see somebody who's come through the making side and then getting into design. It doesn't automatically go to like a mid-century modern aesthetic, and that you can see a development through your works. I think you sort of see Shaker and then going into Art Deco and then a really contemporary interpretation of Art Deco, which I don't see anybody else doing.
Oh, thank you. It's I suppose when I think about the furniture I like these days, it tends to be the really beautiful, the really ornate stuff that's probably a little bit over the top for a lot of people, but it's what I'm drawn to, I think, because it's usually the people that made that or designed that kind of stuff were making for really wealthy people, and so they're trying to make these really elaborate things that just explode, so for whatever reason I'm really drawn to that. So I try to take those elements and put it into my furniture, which doesn't always work because, when people are making Art Deco furniture in the 50s, they're using like the finest materials available, and now we don't have that luxury anymore. So there's a few restraints on it, but it's just what I really enjoy looking at and in turn making as well. So it's exactly, you're right there with the order of it. Like it definitely started out with the Shaker stuff, which is a really big thing that Alistair teaches at the Guild. Shaker stuff was just the way it was made, very important to know about and know how to build. And then, I suppose my personal influence at the time was a bit more mid-century. And then the more I learnt about furniture and was looking at historic stuff, like the Federal and the Georgian furniture and then the Art Deco stuff, it all started to, build. And I suppose you can see that reflected a little bit in my work these days.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think we probably have very similar ideas of what is interesting in furniture. I have said before, early on when I first started furniture, and I really wanted to, I tried my hand and made as much as I could of the Victorian Federal type, Queen Anne type stuff. Just because I thought to myself, I kind of feel it's been forgotten, not in the sense of hasn't been forgotten. I think people have forgotten how to make things like that. And because you'll be hard pressed to find many people who can put together like your little Triffid foot hall table. I mean, I had personally not made a Triffid foot leg. I could do the legs, but not the Triffid part. Probably need a bit of practice. And there's not many people who could do that. And I would love to put more elements of those styles in furniture as well. Because I kind of feel like, for me, without knowing how the old masters did it, you're kind of ignoring like generations of knowledge. By just looking forward, which I think is great as well, but I feel like some kind of personal, I'm not sure what the word is, but I feel like I kind of owe the previous generations at least some time and thought of how the hell do you guys do this with maybe a bandsaw and that's it, and we've got every tool known to man and still people can't do it. It's still bloody difficult, and people say, "Oh, we'll just throw it on a CNC these days." But you cannot. It's the one kind of furniture which is you have to get out your carving chisels, to add that into furniture, I think is, and to add it into furniture these days and have it look new and fresh is super amazing.
Yeah, I think my take on that, I suppose, was I thought there would be a small gap in the market when I started doing that kind of stuff. I got offered a couple of small jobs in that kind of style, and I was like, yeah, sure. It'd be super fun to build. I'd be building up a bunch of new skills that I haven't done before, and I'm getting paid to do it. And it might not be maybe as much as the piece would be worth at the end, but at least I'm still getting paid to learn. So I would take on literally any job that came my way in the first few years of my furniture making career. And every single time, like, I'm not saying that the piece turned out great, but I would put as much effort as possible into each individual piece to try to, push my skills right to the limit, just to try to learn as much as possible on whatever little piece I was doing. And that's exactly what happened with that little hall table. Like, I had a pretty small budget for that, and I really wanted to do a ball and claw foot, but I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to do a ball and claw foot and still have money to buy lunch at the end of the job. So I was like, you know what, I reckon I'll do a Triffid foot, and it'll be a little bit easier, and I'll still get to do a bit of carving and that kind of stuff. And and that's what I ended up with. So
that's awesome.
I really enjoy the challenge of building that kind of furniture, and it would not live in my house. My partner Catherine would definitely not allow that either, but it's probably a good thing. But I really love building it. So it's great fun.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a wee question about the Art Deco cabinet? What sort of scale is that? So you see the opening in the middle. Is that head height? You can walk into that?
That's a full-size set of double doors.
Full-size set of double doors.
So that'd be like an 1860 opening or something like that.
Right.
And 2 meters tall. So I think the final measurements for that piece were about 4.6 wide, and I think it was about 2.4 high.
Nice.
Yeah, so
okay. And one quick technical question about it. I'm just about to take on a tambour door for a client.
Yep.
And I'm admiring yours and wondering how the hell you got the marquetry to line up without the saw kerf messing up the pattern. Did you cut them on a bandsaw?
No. So there's actually, if you want to see a video of it, I've done a little video that's on my Instagram which shows the process of making those doors. But if anyone doesn't have that and wants to know, what I did was, and you guys are going to laugh at me for this, but I was really concerned about movement in those timber slats.
Yeah.
Are they're 6mm ply or 8mm ply or something? Or?
No, so I made my own walnut plywood because the corners were going to be exposed, and I wanted, as it turned the corner, I wanted it appear to be solid walnut. So I resawed a stack of walnut and made a walnut plywood out of, I think it was 7 layers. And then I veneered the canvas onto the back, and then I made a face veneer, and I inlaid the motif on the front with the white oak and then the quarter sawn walnut within each of those sort of shapes. And then I pressed that veneer onto the front. And then once that was all... I skipped a part. So once the veneers were all pressed initially, I cut the slats on the panel saw and then clamped them together. And then I veneered the canvas on the back and the front veneer over the face. And then
did you slice it?
Individually sliced every slat with a marking gauge,
And then did you have to go and clean up, like sand each corner, while it was attached to the canvas?
Yeah, I had to go back and put a tiny little arris on the corner of every piece, and all the interior sides of the slats were all shellacked and polished before it was clamped together and then veneered.
You crazy person.
So I remember reading in a book that it's quite an old book actually. I should get the name for you, but they were talking about how to make tambour doors, and the guy was he was making a point that you needed to polish the sides of the slats before you clamped it together and put the canvas on the back, because otherwise the slats can stick together and then you're just stuck with a solid board. So polishing all the sides and then doing the final pressing after that.
It's actually a practical part of it, is to stop it gluing together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome.
Very good. Thanks for answering. I'm going to tell my client I'm not making walnut plywood, but that is amazing.
Tambour doors are great. They're really fun to make, and that's the satisfaction when you actually get them in the groove for the first time and they slide around that corner. It's awesome. Like, I really love it, and I'm sure you'll love the process as well. Whichever way you go about doing it, I'm sure you'll be stoked with the outcome for sure.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things I saw on your website was to do with costing a project. And I thought this would be quite interesting because we talk about this quite often on the show.
Yep.
One of the things I noticed is that you have a base price of $1,000. That's where a project's going to start.
Yep.
Is that still something that you're actively doing?
Well, that's something I've actually put that page up recently because I get really tired of the conversation with people that they really have no idea what furniture costs. So you'll get 3/4 of the way through a briefing and whatever, and then you finally start talking about the money, and you realise that they've got nowhere near enough money to even consider a project that you're talking about. Yeah. So I suppose I've put it there as a little bit of a deterrent, which sounds bad. But I'm at the point now where I'm just kind of sick of wasting my time talking to people that they're comparing the prices to like an IKEA or a 40 Winks or something like that. Yeah. And it's like, if you want that, just go and buy it because I can't build it for that price. If you're coming to me, you're coming for something that's specific for your needs, and I'm more than happy to cater for that, but I have to get paid at the end of the day as well. So it's not a set base price or anything like that. It's just more of hey, let's be realistic. If you want anything, it costs money,
Yeah. That's really smart. I was just about to call my website guy today and say I need to redo it because it's about 4 years old. Okay. And I was thinking that is something I think I'll add in myself as some just kind of base price. Although I do have kind of base prices on some of the pictures on my website, just to give people an idea of what some kind of types of things cost. But having an extra page just to say, look, shit's going to cost you money. So for some reason, somehow my name has gotten out to some people. There's one particular university class that every year, without fail, I get at least one request from this design course or something to say, I need you to make this little box thing. It's always a little box that does something weird, like has a button on it or a secret something or other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can tell it's from a student, the way everything they interact. I'm like, okay, minimum price, this little box is going to cost you $500, like absolute minimum. And I just never get a word back. I don't know why they keep contacting me, but yeah.
It sounds like you're the local woodworker who's good at what he does.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's and it is a bit frustrating. Like I do feel bad sometimes because people they might be ignorant, but it's not their fault. I think these days people expect to get a lot for not much, and that's fine. We do live in a bit of a disposable world where things are way cheaper than they should be at the moment. So I'm not having a go at anybody or anything, but it is just a bit like, I can't do anything in less than a day, like if I'm going to start something, it's going to take a day. And so if it's going to take a day, I need to get paid for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I know a guy in Wellington that I'm not sure if it's on his website, but he does say essentially every job is a minimum of 20 hours because you can't do much. Most jobs are going to take you at least half a week to actually finish it.
Yep, for sure.
And so that's a pretty good way to get rid of the tire kickers as well.
Yeah, thanks. I was a little unsure putting it up, but I was like, nah, you know what? Stuff it. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I think you're dead right.
Yep.
Can you talk us about some of the commissions with friend of the show and constant name dropper on here, Adam Markowitz? Some of the
I know that guy.
Yeah, some of the collaborations you've done with him on his stuff.
I think it's mainly come out of necessity. is an incredible architect, incredible furniture maker as well, but he's just time poor. So he comes up with, well, he gets asked to do commissions for people, and I think at the moment he's just like, look, I'd love to do this, but I don't have the time, and I need to prioritise, the good paying stuff, which is the architecture. And so he sort of got in contact with me initially. Now that I'm at the VWA, which was pretty easy, sort of walked 2 bays over and then said, "Hey, how would you feel about doing a collab?" And I jumped at the idea. I saw the design that he'd done for the Hero bookcase or the Hero cabinet. I forget exactly what it's called, but I saw the design. I was like, yeah, that's fantastic. I'd love to build that. So we sort of chatted about exactly how we'd go about it and made some sort of design, just not so much design decisions, but structural decisions together. And then, I just sort of got stuck into it. So I've had a great time working with Adam. I think he's very practical in terms of costing and all that kind of stuff as well. I think because of his background in architecture and the clients that he deals with, he knows what things are worth and what they should cost, and he knows what's involved in building them as well. So he always comes with a very realistic and open mind, and we sort of have had some fun on a couple of projects together recently. So it's been good.
The Hero cabinet is an absolute ripper of a piece, but it must have been really different dealing with clients who would just sort of leave you to it versus dealing with somebody like Adam, who obviously knows his shit, and
for sure,
and how hands on and hands off he was at different points. Like, was there any tension over things that?
There wasn't any.
Pretty naturally.
Yeah, there wasn't any tension. We get along pretty well anyway, and I think we're both, like, when we come to do a project, we're both pretty upfront about everything together. So he had a full idea of the cost going into it and the challenges that were involved in building it. So we worked really well together through that, and we did encounter some issues. There was I don't know how much he wants me to say about this, but he designed that to be an individual standalone piece. But what he hadn't thought about initially when he designed it was getting it into the place that it had to live.
Yes.
So the challenge with that one in particular was it had to go up a lift, down a hallway, and up a set of stairs with a really low roof. And if you look at it, it's a corner cabinet that's 2.2 meters high at the highest point, 1,800 long. It's not going to turn a corner too easily. So we then had to figure out a way to make it dismantleable, and so we could get it into the house. So that was one of the problems that neither of us had quite considered until we were about a third of the way through the job. So that changed a few things, and it made it a little bit more challenging than it needed to be. But we got it figured out, and it was good in the end. So
that's a pretty important. Actually, you bringing that up, and we've talked about it a little bit. Brian's got awesome stories about that.
No, don't
about
PTSD like that.
It's one thing to come up with a cool design that you love and the clients love, or the clients bring you a design kind of idea and it looks good. And then when you start looking at where can I actually put a cut line in this thing?
Yeah.
And it doesn't line up with any feature of the piece. It really, that's when I think your kind of skill set gets tested. About how can you actually design around the fact that this piece is going to be broken down into like 8 different pieces, and then we've got to put it back together. What are you going to do? We're going to screw it back together and then hide the screws and then put doors on top of it. You got double thickness carcasses, and then it's quite a major feat to take a design and split it up.
Yeah, for sure. That's why me and Joey, I think, start with the problems and solve them first, and then do the design afterwards.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're bang on. Find the point, because I've always thought most jobs, I would say 90% of jobs are essentially the same thing. We're building some kind of box. There's probably going to be some decoration on it, but there's usually one element that makes that job special or different. And it's working out how you incorporate that one element and then how you solve all the problems that that one element changes to your standard kind of quote-unquote box making. And once you find that solution, and then it's pretty well go ahead and do it.
The problem solving is, I think it's one of the funner parts of our job. You know, it's like the design, as I say, is like it's something that doesn't come naturally to me. So, you know, it's like it needs to turn a corner or it needs to wrap around here, or how am I going to make that happen? And that's, you know, it's really enjoyable. And when you finally figure out the solution and then you're able to implement it, it's just like, you know, it's a fist punch to the air. You know, like it's a great feeling.
Yeah, more and more I've found myself enjoying that challenge of sitting in front of my computer, because I always model everything up once I've thought about it. And I love that of like, okay, I've thought about it, I'll draw it up, I think this will work, talk to some other people, show them the drawings. Do you think we could actually pull this off if we did this, and then the next day would do this thing, and then after that would be able to get a screw in from this angle and then would attach that panel, and like, okay, yeah, sure, I think we can do it. That's always fun.
Well, I think one of the things about being at the VWA that I've learnt is most of the other tenants there work through 3D modelling in one way or another to design. And I, as you can probably tell from prior to this podcast, I'm really bad with computers and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So there's no way that I'll ever be able to do that, I don't think. So all my designs have always been hand-drawn. And so it's I don't really solve many problems in the drawing phase. It all tends to happen as I'm building. So they're usually pretty crude drawings initially, and I'll end up doing a scale drawing just to make sure it all proportionately looks pretty good. But then, there's a lot of decisions in my furniture that just get made as the piece is coming together. I like to sort of watch it come together and say, okay, well, that's going to look a little bit too thick if I keep it at 60 mil. Maybe I'll take it down to 55 and we'll just make everything else to suit, you know. So that was probably a bad example, but you know what I mean.
No, I do that exact same thing, but I do that on the model because especially for the scaling thing, because it takes time to draw a scaled drawing. For one, you've got to know how to draw with pen and paper. It's kind of the opposite approach, really, but I find like I can just ages. So how do you give a client the hand-drawn kind of scale drawing and say it's going to look like this but in 3D?
Pretty much. I'll do a pretty pretty crude 3D drawing. And I'll say, look, you've got to trust me, but it's going to look like this, but just a fair bit better. You know, and obviously, you can't get as much detail in a drawing as you can into a full-size piece. So, that leaves me a little bit of room to be able to be a bit more creative throughout the process as well. So I can add a bead here or there. I can, put a little cove in or something like that I think is going to enhance the piece. But it's not necessarily something that the client needs to know about at the start. What I've learnt recently is that there's a lot of people that can't visualize things. And so if you give them maybe just a standard drawing, like a job site drawing that's got the plan view and the front view and stuff. They find it really hard to turn that into a 3-dimensional piece of furniture in their mind, and that's fine. So if you overcomplicate it, it confuses them. So I try to keep my drawings fairly simple, and I show them a lot of reference pictures and things like that, and say, look, I'm leaning towards something like this with a cove like this. But we'll see how the piece comes together, and I'll make a decision down the track. Are you okay with that? And they'll be like, generally they're like, yeah, that's fine.
Wow, that's really cool. So when I first started, I was really paranoid that I would make one of those creative decisions, and the clients would say, I didn't agree to this little cove. So I would do whatever I could to draw in every detail I thought I was going to make on the piece, and I spent hours kind of finessing a drawing and saying your piece is going to be exactly like this, and I would build it exactly like my drawing, because then I'd say, if you don't like it, it's right here. You have the drawing of it.
Yeah,
but,
you agreed to it, yeah.
Yeah, but I love the idea that you kind of a little bit shady on the actual details, and you go, oh, well, that looks better now.
Yeah, I think
you're obviously at a point now as well, Sim, that you have a back catalogue of work that clients will trust you to produce something that's
that's
worthy
right.
at the end.
I think I rely on that quite a lot actually now. At the start, I would give them as much information as I could, like you say, because I don't want them to be surprised. I don't want them to turn around and say, I didn't like that, and have to rebuild something. But now I feel like, if they're asking me to build a custom piece, which, literally every piece I've ever made has been a one-off, they can see all the stuff that's on my website and make a decision whether they like my style or even, the design decisions that I'll make throughout the process. Like, they can see, that each piece has sort of come together by the end, and if they're happy to trust me on that, then we both end up usually with a pretty good finished product.
You said something earlier about Adam, the hero cabinet that you did with him, and his ideas on costing, being an architect. It just actually struck me how clever that piece is, in the fact that there is very, very little material in it for quite a big piece that has a big presence.
Yeah,
there's very little volume of material and lots of repetitive elements in it.
He's done a really, really good job designing that piece, because it serves a number of functions. Like, it acts as a bit of a privacy screen, and it acts as a bookcase and holds a TV and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right, it has a really light appearance to it. When I was purchasing the materials, it didn't seem like there was next to none. Like, it still seemed like there was a fair bit of stuff in it. But it gives the appearance that it's really light, which, he's a brilliant designer, Adam, and he's got a really good eye for detail and, seeing how things are going to come together. So yeah, my hats off to Adam for his skills.
And what about at the minute? Are you working on anything interesting?
What am I working on? You probably haven't seen much of it yet. I did another collaboration with Adam. We made a really big dining table, and I think he's put up a couple of, maybe one or two photos of it so far. But that was another real challenge that was really fun to build. It was 3 meters long, which isn't crazy, but it's reasonably big, a meter wide. But the kicker was that he wanted it a meter high to use as like a bit of a tasting table, as well as, be able to sit up on bar stools at the table. So we had to design this thing to be structurally sound and strong, and not rock or twist or anything at a meter high, which was a bit of a challenge, which Adam resolved the design of it really well. And then we sort of came together to figure out structurally how we were going to beef it up and everything. But the extra challenge with that, again, was I had to go into a lift and had to go up 40 floors. And so it all had to be able to be dismantled. So we sent it up to Brisbane, and with some very, very careful measurements, made sure that it fitted into the lift and got up to the top of the penthouse. And it worked out really great. It was solid blackwood, really, really beautiful table. Again, Adam's done a brilliant job on the design. Looks really sleek. But yeah, really fun to build as well, like super challenging. I'm talking a lot because you haven't seen it, so I'm going to have to describe it a little bit. But it's got these, how do you explain
It's the OG table, right, that one?
It is, yeah. So have you seen a picture of the front leg or anything?
Yeah, the legs, yeah.
So there's these huge, like, what are they? They're like nearly 300 mil deep. The name has escaped me. Bridle joints from the rails into the legs, and they're all exposed at the front. And so, these really fun, challenging joints throughout the process of that table. And a lot of things that went into it were really fun to build. So that was another good one. But currently just doing some bread and butter work, restoring an old table, and hopefully coming up at the end of the year, I've got a bunch of good projects lined up. So, the next 6 months should be pretty fun, I think.
Awesome. Do you have, this could lead on, but we'll try and keep it short. Do you have a finish of choice for finishing your pieces, or do you send everything out?
No, I finish them all in house, but I kind of feel like there's always there's no super finish. I don't think. I always lean towards a shellac and wax finish wherever I can.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy the process. I think you end up with a really nice finish that's like easy to repair, it's organic, all that kind of stuff. But I'm aware that you can't use a shellac finish on a dining table because it'll just get trashed. And I'm aware that there's multiple finishes for that reason. Like if when I did my bench tops in the kitchen at home, I got them all sprayed in 2-pack because I figured that was going to be the most hard-wearing finish that was going to be suitable for that kind of work surface. But if I'm doing like a cabinet or something that's not going to be, touched or have coffee cups or anything put on it too often, I'm always going to lean towards a shellac and wax finish.
Right. Okay. So you did that, say, even for that really large deco piece, you shellacked it?
I shellacked most of it, but I did use a lot of Danish oil on that too.
Okay, cool.
I spoke to the client. I said, "How prepared are you to maintain this?" and she said, "Yeah, look, I'm prepared to do what it takes. I'm spending a bit of money on it, so I want to look after it." I said, "All right, well, the majority of it will be fine. I'll just do that in shellac, but every so often, maybe once a year or once every 2 years, if you want to rub on a coat of oil, that's going to keep the give it a bit more longevity and keep it looking a little bit nicer."
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's always good to kind of know where people stand. I know some fine furniture guys will just straight up send their stuff out to a professional finisher because it is a whole job in itself.
For sure.
I tend to try and do everything myself, unless I'm having to paint a door gloss. That's a different story.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think finishing is a whole nother skill set, and I don't claim to be a finisher. I did a few classes in French polishing and rubbing shellac and that kind of thing, and I just enjoyed it, and I feel like I picked up that particular skill reasonably well.
That's cool.
So I don't know heaps about like grain filling, and like you see these guys like Liam Thomas and stuff who are just amazing at doing their the repairs on the mid-century stuff and tinting and all that kind of stuff. I can't do that, and I don't claim to be able to. It's a full nother set of skills, but where I can, I like to do the finishing myself because I also think that's one of the most rewarding parts of a job. Is you spend all this time making it and getting everything perfect, sanding it to a T, and then once you put that first coat of finish on, it's really exciting.
All right, I reckon we'll probably leave it there because we've hit our time. We could probably carry on talking for for a fair bit longer, I reckon.
Yeah, we can talk about woodworking forever.
Yeah, such is the craft, but let's call it there. So to everyone watching, to everyone listening, if you did enjoy the show, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. It really does help us out. Joey and Brian, thanks again for hanging out. Simeon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No worries.
It's been really great to hear your story, and I hope everyone listening got as much out of it as we did. So thanks again, everyone. Take care, and we will see you in the next show.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.